Hey guys, this is Mr. Breen, and in this video I'll be talking about different types of money and their history. Now, way back in the olden days, supposedly everybody just dealt with each other through barter. So you just traded, your chicken for some hunks of cow meat, or you traded a little bit of wheat for somebody else's milk or something like that. And this is not money, by the way. If you're using barter, that means by definition that you are not using money. Okay, what a lot of people really did was they used credit. So they would say, look, I'll take, 100 pounds of, they didn't have pounds, but 100 pounds of wheat from you now, and I'll pay it to you slowly over time with some other kind of thing. And so this sort of worked a little better than just direct exchanges. But this is also, we can also think of this as being like an in-kind payment. So instead of paying somebody in money, you're paying someone in stuff. Okay, now this is not very efficient. This form of payment is not very efficient, okay, because you need to have a coincidence of wants. In other words, I have something, you need to want that exact thing and be willing to trade exactly what I want for that thing. But that doesn't really happen very often. So the number of trades is going to be lower. The number of trades is going to be lower. And so the amount of specialization, because it's going to be a little harder to specialize, is a little bit lower, and therefore efficiency is going to be a little bit, really a lot, lower. Without the ability to trade easily, we can't take as much advantage of comparative advantage. So people found ways to deal with this, and the first way is to use commodity money. In other words, take some commodity, okay, that everybody kind of wants, and use that as money. Now, this is not barter. I want you to understand this is not barter. The reason is you have actually chosen some one or maybe two commodities to use as money, and the definition of barter is not using money. So what could you use? Again, you need to use something that everybody would accept as payment. Almost everybody in society could use it in some way. You need to choose something that is relatively limited, okay? Something that couldn't just be, blades of grass would not be good, because you just go out and pick some blades of grass and you're going to get a lot of inflation. You guys know that through common sense. Okay, it has to be somewhat portable. You have to be able to carry it around to some degree. And it has to be durable. In other words, it has to last over time. So, it's not like you pay with it today and tomorrow it's gone. It can't work like that. It has to be able to be saved to some degree, okay? So some things that people used were like salt. Okay, salt is very good in the olden days because livestock need a lot of salt. So if you're a shepherd or you're herding cows or goats or something like that, okay, they need a lot of salt, it turns out. And salt is also good for keeping meat and other things fresh. Okay, you might also use gold or silver. Now these things are good because they're extremely durable. Okay, gold basically lasts forever. Silver tarnishes, but it doesn't rust like other kinds of metal, right? And they're nice and shiny, and people sort of like them for that reason. They might also use grain for obvious reasons. Lots of people are farmers, and you need grain, wheat, and things like that to live. So grain is sort of a good means of payment. It's also, we'll talk about some other advantages a grain has in a second. And there's also sheep, okay? Lots of people are sheep herders, and sheep meat and other sheep products are very important, like wool. So people are willing to accept sheep in payment for things. Everybody can use that. Now, just to show you that these things really were used, salt in Latin is sal, and we actually get the word salary from that. Okay, sheep is pecus, okay, it's a flock of sheep, or pecora, and so they get their word, the Latin word for money, pecunia, from this. And in English we have this word impecunious, which probably none of you have ever used, but it's a good SAT word. So impecunious means you don't have money. Now, some of these things still have other weaknesses, right? They're not uniform necessarily. You bring a chunk of gold and, you can weigh it. You would have to weigh it. But how many chunks of gold is this worth? Well, it's hard to tell. Maybe you say it's this many ounces of gold, but every time you have to make a transaction, you're going to have to weigh it. And the same thing with salt and potentially, now grain is a little better here. right? Because, again, well, you still have to weigh it, I guess. And sheep are not very uniform. There are bigger sheep and smaller sheep, and sheep with better wool and sheep with worse wool, and sheep with better meat and sheep with a little less good meat, and sheep that are going to have a lot of children and sheep that aren't going to have a lot of children, and sheep that are sick, and anyway. So uniformity is an issue, and divisibility is an issue. It's good to be able to make change, right? A sheep is kind of a big ticket item, so you don't want to go to the store and every time you need something you trade a whole sheep for it, and I guess you could chunk the sheep up and make change that way, but it's really not the same, is it? So some early societies, like the Phoenicians, I believe, were the first ones who were supposed to have coined gold and silver. They turned them into regular amounts. So there's coinage. Okay, coinage to make things uniform. But this actually led to other problems. So one problem with this is that you have this coin. It starts out, it's nice and round. It's got somebody's face on it. Okay, but over time, they'd start to get a little less round. And the reason is that the coin is supposedly still worth the same amount, so people will shave some of the gold and silver off the edges. If you've ever wondered why modern coins have little ridges around on the edges, it's so you can't shave the edges of it off. Now, the coin derived its value from the fact that it was made of a specific amount of gold or silver, but now it's not made of the same amount of gold or silver. Now you're going back to having to weigh it, and that's what you were trying to avoid in the first place. So, over time, people figured out something better, okay? And instead, what they would do is they would issue certificates, like coupons or something like that, in exchange for which you could get salt or gold or something like that. So this is called representative money. Instead of being valuable in and of itself, inherently valuable, instead it was just pieces of paper that you could take and exchange with, say, a bank for the valuable thing. But really, probably all you're going to do is exchange it for other things that you really wanted instead. So China was the first basically country or region to do this because they were the ones that invented the printing press, so they could print these things in the first place. And they had a state monopoly on salt. So they issued certificates that were backed by salt. You could go and get salt from them in exchange for these certificates, but why do that, right? Just use them as money. Okay, it wasn't until Europe had the printing press, right? They invented movable type, not the printing press. Okay, that was Gutenberg, right? But the first certificates of this kind in Europe were in Sweden, where a lot of people mined copper. But copper is kind of heavy to lug around, not very nice to carry around, to have to buy, your candy bar at the store. So instead, you would drop your copper off with like coppersmiths or something like that, and they would take this copper in exchange for certificates. And you could take those certificates back to the coppersmiths and get your copper from them if you wanted, but you really didn't want to do that, right? Instead, you wanted to go buy stuff with them. And throughout Europe, okay, eventually, we had the introduction of bank money. So what you did is you took your gold and silver bullion, that's just gold and silver that hasn't been coined, or maybe your gold and silver coins, and you dropped them off at the bank. And Amsterdam, the Bank of Amsterdam was famous for this, and they would give you some certificates in return that said, look, this entitles you to, say, 1 ounce of gold, the 1 ounce that you dropped off at the bank. And instead of, redeeming that for the gold, which you always could if you wanted, instead you would just take that to the market and use that bank money to buy stuff. The nice thing is that this guarantees that the money is uniform, so you can't shave the edges off bank money, right? That's not going to work. And also you can easily make change for these things. Okay, you could issue the bank money in larger or smaller amounts. Now the problem is you have to trust that that bank is holding on to all the gold that they say they're holding on to. If that trust breaks down, then that money isn't going to be acceptable anymore, and there might even be a run on the bank. In other words, if people lose trust in the bank, they might all run to the bank to try to get their gold out all at one time. Now, even this really wasn't good enough because states, governments who issued money, wanted to be able to be fully in control of their money. And also in the Great Depression, a lot of people thought, well, the gold standard actually really prevents us from being able to enact economic policies of the way that we would want. A lot of people blamed the gold standard and blamed the gold standard for the Great Depression. And so eventually over time, most countries abolished the gold standard, including the United States. So for those of you who believe that your US dollars were backed by gold, I'm sorry to have to inform you that they are not. They're not backed by anything. Instead, fiat money of this kind is simply valuable basically because the government says it is. Unlike commodity money, it's not inherently valuable. And unlike representative money, it can't be exchanged on a guaranteed basis with a bank or with the government for something like gold or silver. Okay, and this has a lot of advantages, but again, you have to trust that it's worth something. If you don't trust that it is worth something, you could have a serious crisis very quickly.